Action.
Hi, welcome to This Week in Property. I'm Jayashree Kurup, editor, MBTV. I have Prabhakar Sinha, he's the real estate editor of the Times of India. And I have Amit Oberoi from Colliers. And you have gone to the developer and agreed on various terms with him. You could have bought on a subvention scheme where the developer agrees to pay the EMIs till possession or for a fixed period of time. You could have gone to the developer and bought at a certain price, and the developer may have said that he will buy back at a certain other price. Or a third option is the developer says, buy from me, I will pay your rental arrangements till the possession of your property. In many cases, from 2009 till about 2014 or 15, we've had a lot of consumers who went for these arrangements. After which there have been 2 or 3 interventions, but the complaints that we're receiving from consumers is that the developers are not keeping their promises. If that is so, whom should you go to? Welcome to This Week in Property. Let's discuss this issue. Keep those questions coming. We'll try and address as many of your questions as we can. So, Prabhakar, let's talk about the problems here.
Yeah, basically, developer when in the process of trying to sell their product today, even earlier, what they used to give some kind of a promises to the buyers that you take loan and you give the 100% amount or whatever the loan has been taken by you, and they will service the loan. That means the EMI or the interest on that loan will be paid by the developer till the possession is given many a times. Sometimes it is mentioned in the contract that for 3 years or for 4 years, the EMI will be paid by the developer, and after that, it will be the buyer who will pay the EMI. Now, as the project has been delayed, developer doesn't have the money, so they stop paying the EMI after some time. Mind it here, the loan is taken by the buyer. So if the EMI will stop going to the bank, it is the buyer who will be defaulted against the bank. And so in that case, bank will raise demand against the buyer that was you either pay or I'll declare you defaulter. So the buyer will have to pay the loan, the EMI, to avoid declaring themselves as a defaulter.
Because your civil score is going to go down and you will have a problem getting loans in the future, even though the arrangement was that the developer would pay the EMIs on your behalf and
doesn't matter.
Yeah,
exactly. And
ultimately the loan is in your name.
On your name. And not only this, suppose even after 1 year or 2 years, if one has the buyer stop paying, the developer stop paying EMI, and the buyer is also not chipping in and start paying the EMI, bank will declare him defaulter and will auction his unit in the market and will try to recover money. And in that case, he will lose the entire initial payment that the buyer had paid, because the property will not be sold at that price, and ultimately he will lose the entire amount. So first of all, before entering into this kind of arrangement today, I mean, one must think of it that whether developer is going to keep their words or not. Most of the times, we have seen, most of the times, in fact, I haven't come across a single case where developer had kept promises, let me tell you. In almost all cases, developer at some time or other, they default, and ultimately it is buyer who starts paying or who has to chip in and starts keep paying their EMI. So this kind of arrangement is not very, very healthy, number one. Number two, if you are entering into this kind of an arrangement, then say that till the possession is given. Now, unless the possession is given is not accepted by the developer, then what will happen? And why the developer enters into this kind of arrangement? Because developer, when a buyer takes the loan, his interest rate is 9% or 10%. But if a developer goes to a bank to take loan, his interest rate will be somewhere around 12% to 15%. And most of the time, he will not get loan also from the bank. So in this case, he gets the loan at a cheaper price. So he always would like to take loan through the buyers. So enter into this kind of thing. Now, once the default happens, if the developer stops paying, then it is very, very difficult for the buyer to approach any of the forums. Now, because this arrangement particularly, that when instead of buyer, it is the developer who is paying the EMI, this is a financial instrument. So the RERA says that I will adjudicate that whether the property is getting delivered or not, it is not getting constructed or not, and quality is maintained or not. Payment demanded by the developer is paid to him or not. All this kind of a thing. But who is paying EMI and who is not paying EMI? He says that, boss, it is under SEBI right now, because SEBI has adjudicated that this kind of instrument, that when developer is paying EMI to the bank or developer is paying to buyer. Even in many cases, if you remember, that buyer have paid, say, 2 crore of rupee, and developer says that
giving post-dated checks to the
post-dated checks to the buyers. Now, all those instruments have been treated as a financial instrument. Then, against the SEBI disorder, some of the banks, some of the developer had moved to the appellate tribunal. Now, judgment from the appellate tribunal is expected. And I was talking to one RERA head, and he said that let appellate tribunal take a call. Once that judgment comes out, then only it will be clear that whether it comes in our jurisdiction or it remains with the SEBI. Now, if it comes under their jurisdiction, then he says that we will have to find out that what kind of, procedure or what kind of education will be required to streamline this market. But this is a gray area at present.
And SEBI has stepped in and said that if it's a financial agreement between a bank, a consumer, and a builder, are the adjudicating authority.
Then that instrument need to be registered with the SEBI first.
Yes.
The developer has to register that instrument with the SEBI.
So the reason why we've picked it up is that there's a topicality to this whole thing. You should be, if you have entered into such agreements with your developer and with your bank, you should be aware that there is a order that we're waiting from the courts declaring whether SEBI, it should be a SEBI jurisdiction or a RERA jurisdiction.
If you remember that many developers stopped paying checks to the buyers when they had accepted money, and have stopped paying the interest against the check they had accepted.
So actually the default, Amit, is on two counts. One is that they entered it into an agreement with buyers and they've let down the buyers. They're not keeping the terms that they have followed. Of course, nobody could predict that the markets would crash to this extent. But whatever the reason, if it is a bad market for the consumer, for the builder, it is a bad market for the buyer as well. So that is the first letdown. The second letdown is that if you've stopped paying, suddenly a buyer who thought that he would not have to pay that extra amount till he gets possession of the house is suddenly left with the burden. Your views?
Personally, my view is that there is an element of trust in any transaction that you are getting, and this is a breach of trust if it were to happen in that sense. So, in my opinion, and of course this is sub judice, in my opinion, they should come under RERA. Even though I technically agree it is a financial transaction, but this is the reason why RERA has been come into play. This is the reason why RERA is there from the time that you register a project, and RERA tries to include a lot of transparency in terms of data. And because if it is under RERA, a project is under RERA, all problems can be found out at a much earlier stage than what was happening earlier. In fact, what RERA has done today is that RERA has ensured that developers who are less likely to be compliant are not building projects today or getting into joint ventures or construction agreements with larger developers who have that ability to be able to deliver. So that is one change that RERA has brought about.
So clearly the intent is to deliver now.
Yes, the intent is to deliver, intent is to abide by laws. It has increased the threshold of entry into development as a market. So not everyone should do it. And in my personal opinion, when you are working and taking money from retail investors, you have to be extra prudent, like we see in the mutual fund or the other industries, which is the whole idea of RERA coming into play. Now, whether they should be treated as a financial instrument and one should go to NCLT or should be under RERA, my opinion is that it should be under RERA also. RERA today it has the teeth, it has the regulations, it has to have the personnel to be able to undertake some rule like this. Because you will get a lot of such queries and we need to be able to resolve. And if justice is not delivered within a reasonable period of time, it is justice denied.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So those are my opinion. I think
Sure.
that it should come under
Yeah,
that.
and I believe here, Jayashree, I would like to point out one thing, that in this kind of a transaction, in fact, the RERA should try to adjudicate or try to see to it that when the payment is made, it is always construction linked, and it should be in a graded way, not that the entire amount should be paid to the developer in one go, or the bank should transfer that money in one go to the developer, because that may lead to this kind of a problem, because the diversion of the funds and so many other
Today,
things.
actually, I think that it has been stopped. All money that is released by
Yes,
banks.
earlier, correct. Even RBI has today said subvention schemes, that is taking money instead of a home loan, which is at a higher, construction loan, which is at a higher rate, you're trying to get money from a home loan, has been stopped by RBI. So
Yeah.
these cases are old cases, pre-RERA cases.
Exactly.
So-
And it should be administered very, very strongly, so that such default should not happen. And ultimately what happens, if the default happens, then some party will completely, they will go out of the market completely, and they will be turned to stand. So that kind of situation should not come up, and it is RERA, because the RERA is ultimately the regulator of the real estate market.
Yeah.
So RERA must see to it that even these financial transactions should be very, very transparent, and should happen in such a way which is prudent and support the entire industry.
Like Amit said, the RBI has clearly said that this is an agreement that is not binding.
Yeah.
But it's not that subvention schemes have gone out of the market. There are still subvention schemes that are very much in the market. So what should the consumer do at this point of time, Amit?
So first and foremost, let's start from the foundation, from the very beginning. Any consumer who believes that there is a RERA, so he is 100% protected and can therefore take any degree of risk in this real estate market is wrong.
Yeah.
And they should understand that. It is your money, and for most people, it is their one-time investment, lifetime investment that they put. They should do a proper due diligence for that.
Yeah.
So let me place that on record that you are not, just because there is
You're not
a RERA,
absolved of it.
you are not absolved of your problem. This is a lot of money that you're investing in. Even when we go and buy aloo pyaz, we do a lot of due diligence to figure out whether it's in the right place or not. So you have to do your due diligence. You have to speak to people. You have to see the track record. RERA is good because everything is technically available on the website. That is number one.
Right.
Number two, your documentation should be correct. So if some problem like this comes up, you should be documenting and sending a letter so that it is documented to the developer. This is the problem. Inform your bank as well.
Right.
Before the problem comes to play, then if you need to go to NCLT, Consumer Court, or RERA as the case may be, please do so.
Okay.
No, one thing just said, nowadays, many developers is giving this kind of arrangement. Now, here, what I feel that what should be done, and I believe that many developers are doing that also, that they take 10% initial payment, and then they say rest 90% you pay once the construction is completed or the position is offered. Okay, so in that case, you are not taking loan.
Yeah.
You are just paying 10%, and then after you are saying that, okay, I will take loan and pay you, whether I'm taking loan or from my own pocket, only after project is completed. So then there is no risk.
If you haven't taken the loan in your name,
On your name.
which has gone to the developer.
Then there is no problem. But what happens that in these schemes particularly, developer used to say that, okay, you pay 10% or 5%, and many a times they say that, okay, you just take loan, initial payment also I will make, you take the loan, give me the entire amount, and then after you sit at home, and I will service your loan, and once, after 3 years, many a times it says that after 3 years, the EMI will shift on you, and then you will start paying the EMI, and I will give you the house. And normally in the meanwhile, you know what used to happen.
Even in that case that you mentioned, which used to happen under the old subvention scheme, the ultimate risk lied with the consumer. The consumer was the person whose credit rating is at fault. He may even turn into a defaulter. Again, I'm not trying to be very harsh on the consumer, but the consumer should also follow up with the banks whether those payments have been made or not.
Yes.
If it is my liability, I should keep track of that. So I'm just trying to bring that also as a point.
That is true.
It's not a right practice that somebody
Should reach it out.
but you should also take your own.
we have some of our consumers telling us that we should also mix up our conversation into Hindi. तो जो consumers हिंदी समझते हैं हम उनके लिए ये बता दें कि आज हम इस चीज की बात कर रहे हैं कि आपने एक लोन लिया है, डेवलपर से आपने सबवेंशन स्कीम से घर खरीदा है, 10% दे दिया, 60-80% बैंक ने आपके बिहाफ में डेवलपर को दे दिया, डेवलपर उस पे EMI देते रहना चाहिए था मगर डेवलपर ने वो EMI रोक दिया है, तो आप क्या करेंगे? सेकेंड इंस्टेंस ये है कि अगर रेंटल अरेंजमेंट था कि जब तक आपको घर नहीं मिलता हम आपका रेंट चुकाएंगे, वो रेंट अगर डेवलपर ने रोक दिया तो वो भी एक ब्रीच ऑफ ट्रस्ट है। और तीसरा सिनारियो ये है कि अगर आपका डेवलपर ने कहा कि आप मेरे से 4,000 रुपए में ले लो, मैं आपको अश्योर करता हूँ कि कंप्लीट होने पे मैं आपसे 6,000 रुपए पे बाय बाय करूंगा। अगर डेवलपर आज
पर स्क्वायर फीट
अगर वो मना किया तो वो भी एक ब्रीच ऑफ ट्रस्ट है। ये 3 सिनारियोस की हम बात कर रहे हैं। मेरे साथ प्रभाकर सिन्हा टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया के रियल एस्टेट एडिटर हैं, अमित ओबरॉय कॉलियर्स से हैं, ये कंसल्टेंट हैं, तो हमने सोचा इस इशू को उठाते हैं। Now let's talk about some of the queries that have started coming. I've got a query from Deepak who says, developer promised to a buyback with 30% appreciation. However, if I'm getting a better price in the secondary market, why should I sell it back to the developer? अब यहाँ पे प्रॉब्लम ये है कि कंज्यूमर कह रहा है कि डेवलपर ने मेरे से जो एग्रीमेंट किया था उससे ज्यादा मुझे सेकेंडरी मार्केट में मिल रहा है, क्या मैं वो बेच सकता हूँ? नहीं,
कोई जरूरी नहीं है, क्योंकि ये जो एग्रीमेंट है ये बोलता है कि अगर आप चाहें तो बेच दीजिए हमको। एग्रीमेंट ये नहीं होता है कि आपको बेचना ही होगा। अगर आपका ये दिल करता है कि नहीं साहब मैं नहीं बेचूं, मैं इस घर में रहना चाहता हूँ, तो आपको कोई फोर्स नहीं कर सकता। इसका मतलब कि आपको किसी थर्ड पार्टी को भी बेचने से कोई रोक नहीं सकता है। हाँ, लेकिन अगर आपको 30% से कम रिटर्न मार्केट में मिल रहा है तो आप डेवलपर को बोल सकते हैं कि भाई साहब आपने तो बोला था इस प्राइस पे कर देंगे, अब आप मेरे से इस प्राइस पे खरीदिए।
So the choice is yours, right?
Price is yours. In most agreements, again, let's look at your agreement. Please read that agreement. If it says compulsory buyback, which I think is a very rare case, but just to be sure, आप अपना agreement फिर से एक बार देख लें। 99.9999% पे ये मिनिमम गारंटी की तरह से स्कीम है, यानी कि अगर आपको वो 30% अप्रिसिएशन नहीं मिलता तो आप डेवलपर को बेच सकते हैं, और अगर आपको ज्यादा मिल रहा है और अगर आपका अग्रीमेंट अलाउ करता है आपको सेकंड बाय ऑल मींस प्लीज सेल इट। कोई मजबूरी नहीं है कि आप डेवलपर को वापस बेचें।
We've got Garima Reddy of Hyderabad who says, how to recover the promised rentals during construction period in case the builder refuses to pay. I got the possession, but the builder has refused to pay the rent he had to pay during the construction period. Garima, in your case, kam se kam aapko ghar to mil gaya. You've got your house, and now it's a question of that rental that the developer had to pay you. So your problem is whom should you go to? Of course, there has been a breach of trust, and you have to go. So, Amit, what would you suggest? Whom should Garima go to?
Garima, there is a little bit of gray area in this. Gray area because we don't know if RERA is going to accept this as a case or not, and this is what Prabhakar ji had said right in the beginning. My personal view is, and this is sub judice, that RERA should take these kind of cases as well, and RERA should be adequately staffed to handle such cases. Having said that, let's assume RERA is not able to take this. Please, this is a breach of financial trust, so please take it to NCLT or a consumer court or both, and please have it taken up at the earliest. And please, like I said before, make sure your documentations are up.
Yeah, particularly इस situation में आप एक चीज गौर करिए कि अगर developer delay करता है, if developer delays in the delivery of the house, then for the delay period, RERA can ask him to pay the damage either in the form of SBI's MCLR rate plus 2 percentage points, and in many cases nowadays RERA has said that pay the rental in the market of that house if he has for the period for which delivery has not been made. Now, this is not a financial instrument. This is the RERA order that was.
This is part of the act.
Part of the act.
ये act में है कि अगर डेवलपर ने आपका घर डिले किया है, या तो डेवलपर आपको MCLR plus 2% पे आपको कॉम्पेंसेट करे, या आपका रेंटल जब तक घर तैयार नहीं होता है आपका रेंटल, ये एक्ट में है।
लेकिन अगर जो आप ये बोलते हैं कि ड्यूरिंग द कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड इटसेल्फ, if the developer is entering into an agreement, then the developer is here taking financial burden against the payment that you have made.
Right.
Now, if the RERA should accept it, and if RERA is not accepting it, go to the NCDRC or any consumer court, and consumer court will certainly hear this matter, because here he has entered into a kind of a contract, and that contract must be adhered to.
So there are three or four forums. There is. Let me take the next query and then we'll pick up this issue. Yes.
Before that, add a word of caution. Each agreement can be very specific. So, आप please अपना agreement देख लीजिए. In
Yes.
this case, it could have been two versions of it. One is that the developer promised to pay you the rent while the construction was undergoing, and the other one was that you will get a minimum rent
Yes.
when you take possession of the house. So these are two different cases.
Right.
And in each case, the answer may be different. So please read your agreement, and it's probably not the absolutely perfect forum to answer precise questions.
Sure, sure. यहाँ पे what we're doing is we're giving you a broad general idea of आप कहाँ जा सकते हैं. What are the forums that are open to you? But that doesn't mean that we are telling you exactly what to do, because like Amit said, every case will be slightly different depending on the wording of your agreement. आपका agreement ध्यान से पढ़ें, किसी से पढ़वा भी लें. Go to a specialist and get it read so that you know exactly what you should be doing and whom you should be going to. But अभी आपके पास 3-4 forums. One is RERA, one is NCDRC, one is NCLT, and one of the consumers has said, this is Vijay Thakur from Bombay, who says, should buyers go to RERA or IBC for filing a complaint against defaulting builders? Obviously, bankruptcy court. So, whom should you go to?
Now, here one thing, that for the rentals thing, now rentals thing, particularly after the delivery of the house, okay, that doesn't come under RERA, because RERA job is over the moment completion certificate is given and the possession is given and registry is done.
Yeah.
So RERA is out of the picture. So that part of the problem has to be handled by either the consumer court, mainly the consumer court, because here again he's not defaulting on the another financial instruments, because you have not paid in the money and on which he is going to give you the return, which is the case of the NCLT.
Yeah.
So here you'll have to go into the consumer courts that he has entered into this kind of agreement and he is not keeping the word. So I mean, you file the case in the consumer court or in other civil court. That was, he is not fulfilling his financial agreement, so I will force him to do that. But during the construction period itself, if he is defaulting in payment rentals, then this is a gray area. Even the RERA can hear this, or the consumer court can hear it. I mean, that is for 100%.
So first, consumer court में तो आप जा ही सकते हैं. If this is a violation of a contract, you can go to a consumer court. RERA, whether you can go or not is slightly iffy, but you can go to RERA. If RERA doesn't accept, go to the NCLT.
Yeah.
There are a couple of cases where consumers have started tapping the NCLT also, saying that if the developer cannot keep his contract,
Especially if it's a financial instrument.
especially if it's a financial instrument, or bear in mind that SEBI has said if there's a financial agreement, why should it not be treated as as something where the SEBI has jurisdiction? ये अभी तय नहीं हुआ है कि SEBI का jurisdiction है या नहीं. However, as a financial instrument, can the developers now launch? We don't think so. SEBI has clearly put a stop to that. Right? Let's go to Karna Verma, who says, of Gurgaon, who says, do banks stop collecting EMIs in case a builder defaults on loan of property? No.
Bank will never stop.
You want to elaborate a little more?
Now, here one thing is very clear, that even if your house is not getting constructed, the developer has defaulted, even ran away, but as you have taken the loan from the bank will continue to ask you to pay the EMI, and if you stop paying the EMI, you will be declared as a defaulter. And mind it, not only that, the mortgage, that the property you have given as a mortgage to the bank will only charge on that. Bank here in all this kind of a loan, you have been given a personal guarantee. So your other property can also be charged on, and the bank can, can go to the court and take the degree, and they can take your other property also in lieu of that loan. If you will not pay that loan, you have not cleared the loan completely.
Having said that, and you're absolutely right, your loan should have ideally been construction linked loan, and therefore the onus was also on the bank if a certain milestone was not achieved to stop that. I'm just adding to the
Yes.
complexity of.
In fact,
but
after
despite
2009 to 2014, हमने देखा है कि banks have been giving in advance. कि हम the developers gave the consumers some discount. कि if you give me the entire amount, I will give you a 5%, 2%, 10% discount. And because of that, a lot of consumers did go for those loans where you pay 90%, 95% of the.
I was just saying, in case it's a
Now,
Yeah.
now it cannot happen because SEBI has clearly stepped in and said you cannot. It has to be construction linked.
Correct. But you should not default on the bank loan, because defaulting on the bank loan means you can save yourself only after declaring yourself bankrupt, and that procedure is very long. So otherwise, bank will take any other property, whatever you own, bank can have a charge on that, and bank will recover the money by auctioning that property.
So there's Naveen Pawar who says, I have a question. If the builder defaults on pre-EMI to customers, what measures should be taken in this regard? Now, this is a case where the builder is paying the customers. The checks are coming to the customers and the customer has to pay to the bank. So customer, as a customer, you cannot stop paying the bank. आपको तो बैंक को EMI देना ही पड़ेगा. Pre-EMI हो, EMI हो, आपको तो बैंक लोन सर्विस करना है. But what is the builder has defaulted on giving to the consumer as per the agreement. Whom should they go to? RERA?
SEBI. SEBI says that this is a financial instrument. Now, the issue is this, that SEBI doesn't adjudicate this kind of case. So
Right.
if the SEBI declares it a financial instrument, then you will have a various other forum open where you can go and file the case. Either the consumer court or the NCLT or any other court, you can go and file a case that this gentleman has defaulted on this financial instrument. Now the issue is this, that ये जो सारे इस तरह के इंस्ट्रूमेंट है जहाँ पर कि डेवलपर प्रॉमिस करता है कि आपने जो लोन दिया है उसके बदले में हम ये पैसा आपको देंगे, या तो EMI के फॉर्म में या इंटरेस्ट के फॉर्म में या रेंट के फॉर्म में, ये सारे फॉर्म में जो पैसा देगा वो इस पूरे ट्रांजैक्शन को एक फाइनेंशियल इंस्ट्रूमेंट बना देता है एज पर सेबी जजमेंट। और जैसे ये फाइनेंशियल इंस्ट्रूमेंट बनाते हैं, ये आपको दूसरे फोरम में जाके केस करना पड़ेगा। रेरा ये बोलते हैं, जब मैंने बात किया था एक रेरा के चेयरमैन से, तो वो बोलते हैं कि अगर ये फाइनेंशियल इंस्ट्रूमेंट होता है तो ये मैं एडजुडिकेट नहीं करता, फिर मैं इसको एयर नहीं करूंगा, फिर ये दूसरे फोरम में जाना होगा इसके लिए। लेकिन अगर ये फाइनेंशियल इंस्ट्रूमेंट नहीं है और ये पार्ट ऑफ द प्रॉपर्टी को सेल एंड परचेज के पार्ट में है, तो हम इसको देख सकते हैं, इस केस को फिर हम सुनेंगे। और मेरे विचार से ये वैसा ही होना चाहिए, क्योंकि अगर रेरा सुनता है तो चूंकि जो बायर है वो यहाँ पे लोन पे पैसा किसी को नहीं देना चाहता है, वो घर खरीदना चाहता है। जब घर खरीदने के लिए वो पैसा दे रहा है, तो रेरा एक ऐसा बॉडी है जो कि रियल एस्टेट को रेगुलेट करना चाहता है। तो
And it's a buyer protection act.
बायर प्रोटेक्शन है, तो यहाँ पर बायर को क्यों नहीं आप प्रोटेक्ट करते हैं? और आप बायर को करने के लिए आप वहां पर देखना चाहिए।
100% agree. Exactly. This is ultimately the whole intent is to protect buyers. Intent is to have a structure which protects the buyer.
Yeah.
And which in the long term will give confidence to buyers and which will be good for the industry in the long term.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's Kamal Fanda who says, "What look?
But
This,
just can I add
Yeah.
one point here? And it's
Yeah.
the more, I mean, this is again a very motherhood statement. The more complicated the arrangement, the more likely it is to fail.
Yeah.
I mean, it is going back to your basics. Please do your basics right. Good developer with a good track record, good product, simple product, and save your downside.
This Amit has said in a previous show also. Ultimately, when you think that अगर आपने एक subvention scheme देखा and you feel it sounds extremely attractive, if it seems unnaturally attractive, it is probably unnaturally attractive. So it cannot be fulfilled. So as a consumer, when you go in as a buyer, don't get carried away by the fact that somebody is trying to sell you a dream. What you have to see is, if the money is not there in the system, can that unit be constructed? No. if your money has to come into the system, the developer gave you the subvention scheme so that he gets money at a cheaper rate rather than at a commercial rate. This is a residential, retail rate that he's getting the money at. Treat it only as such and be sure that the developer's track record is good, developer's quality of construction is good, the developer is capable of being able to complete the project. In the future, thanks to RERA, most of this is taken care of. It is the in-between, the interim, when projects are stuck, that is where the problem is being handled right now. Kamal Fanda says, what location is best to invest 40 to 50 lakhs to get a good rental return in NCR? This is outside the purview of our discussion, but I would like to tell you that exactly what Amit said, we would like to again reiterate. Do your research. अगर आप पैसा डालना चाहते हैं, घर में डालना चाहते हैं, and you want to buy a house, आप देखें कि किसी आज Magicbricks जैसे वेबसाइट में आप जा सकते हैं, अपना अमाउंट डाल के आप देख सकते हैं कहाँ घर मिलता है. Then go with those few features that you should go for. Has the developer built in earlier? Does the developer have a good track record? Social media में देखिए लोग क्या बोल रहे हैं उनके बारे में, इस project के बारे में, and join a group of buyers. As individual buyers, you have very little scope. As a group of buyers, you have far greater scope.
फिर आप उस एक दो घर को देखिए, उस घर का क्या रेंटल है मार्केट में, वो भी आप मैजिकब्रिक्स में देख सकते हैं. फिर आप देखिए कि आपने जो 50 लाख रुपया लगाएंगे तो आपको कितना पैसा रिटर्न में मिलेगा. आप वो सब खुद ही जांच लीजिए, और मार्केट में हर एक जगह अवेलेबल है. मैजिकब्रिक्स के साइट पे जाके आप दोनों चीज को तुलना करके देखें कि कहाँ पे आपको पैसा लगाना चाहिए.
And let's come back to the topic that we were discussing. What happens if the EMIs are builders defaulting on the EMIs? Brijesh Kumar of Faridabad says, I'm planning to buy in a subvention scheme and I would like to know the impact on my credit history in case the builder defaults. Your credit history goes for it also.
No, basically in all these cases, अगर builder आपको वाकई में ये subvention देना चाहता है, तो वो क्यों नहीं पूरा पैसा बाद में ले 10% आप अभी दे दीजिए, और जो बाकी पैसा है वो आप एट द टाइम ऑफ पोजीशन, और आप तभी लोन लेके उसको पैसा दीजिए. आप आज लोन क्यों लेना चाहते हैं डेवलपर को देने के लिए? अगर आप आज लोन लेके डेवलपर को देते हैं तो आप एक बहुत बड़े रिस्क में जा रहे हैं, और ये बेहतर है कि उसे आप बोलिए कि ठीक है मैं EMI भी पे करूंगा. दैट विल बी अ बेटर सजेशन rather than you are taking the loan and giving him the money and expecting him to pay your EMI. And that doesn't happen. If a developer is dependent on your money for this purpose, that means the developer is going to default. So don't go for it.
This, in fact, one issue that Ravinder Tikku has raised here, unless there is a uniform buyer-seller agreement across the country and all terms and conditions on execution and penalties are the same, and that agreement is signed at the time of booking and all transactions are through standard bank, RERA is not advantageous to buyers.
No, in RERA there is a model contract already, and nowadays one should enter into a contract through that model contract paper, and all the developer is following that only, because if otherwise all this contract has to be registered with the RERA also, RERA will not accept it.
In fact, Ravinder Tikku has come back to say that the bank, the seller and buyer must be co-owners of the project. Right now the seller is the boss.
No.
Is that true?
No. Even the bank, in fact, in the tripartite agreement, what happens that the property is mortgaged to the bank, and bank can, if the developer or if the buyer is defaulting in payment of the EMI, bank can auction that property. And that agreement is tripartite, and all has to fulfill their part of the liabilities.
So we are talking about pre-RBI stopping these when banks
Yes.
were also giving loan under
Yes,
subvention.
yes.
Then it was a tripartite agreement, which even means that the bank can also sue the developer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't agree with that. The seller
Yeah.
is the boss.
Yeah.
If you did not follow that and you
Yeah.
are following some other magical instrument, then yes.
Even today, I mean, if the developer defaults in the construction and meeting the milestone at a given time, then bank can stop dispersing the loan, and bank can ask him to repay that entire loan, and bank can recall the money, entire money. So bank has a huge power. It's other matter that bank doesn't exercise that.
And Ravinder Tikku, you have come back and said that the execution time must be fixed. Yes, we agree. In fact, we spoke about it.
Already.
It is execution time is fixed, but what we did recommend was that it should be construction linked, so that if there is one level of construction that the developer has not achieved, then the bank stops automatically. जितना दिया है उतना दिया है, मगर आगे और पैसा तो नहीं जाएगा इसमें, right? There is
बैंक रिकॉर्ड कर सकता है इनफैक्ट लोन, अगर लगता है कि ये बंदा आगे रिकॉर्ड कर रहा है डेवलपर, द बैंक हैज द राइट और पावर। ये अलग बात है कि वो रिकॉर्ड करने के बाद भी उसको पता है कि ये लोन वापस नहीं मिलता है तो रिकॉर्ड नहीं कर पाता है, लेकिन एग्रीमेंट में लिखा होता है कि हम लोन रिकॉर्ड कर सकते हैं आपसे।
Ajit Singh of Greater Noida says, what are the pros and cons of buyback scheme? Should buyers really trust these schemes? Buyback is not allowed anymore, right?
अलाउड तो है, कोई भी एग्रीमेंट पे आप इंटर कर सकते हैं, लेकिन सवाल है कि अगर जिस रेट पे बायबैक का एग्रीमेंट आपने साइन किया है और अगर मार्केट रेट उससे बहुत कम है, तो डेवलपर कहां तक बायबैक कर सकता है, ये डिपेंड करता है डेवलपर के कितना पॉकेट उसका डीप है। अगर डेवलपर डजंट हैव द मनी, देन सर्टेनली ही इज गोइंग टू डिफॉल्ट ऑन द बायबैक, एंड इन दैट केस यू कैन गो टू द कोर्ट, I mean asking for money or asking for the relief, but then the whole situation depend on that as he has pointed out, that you must see before buying or entering into this kind of an agreement, that with whom you are entering into this kind of an agreement, whether that developer will be able to meet all those things or not.
Yeah.
So the better the product, the less such plays will come into it.
Right.
Such agreements will be there. I mean, what you are basically saying is that I will buy a product from a developer, but I want him to underwrite my product.
Right.
It just doesn't sound right. Think about it.
You should take risk, and if you are
If
not
not taking risk, you want the higher return,
Yeah.
but you still want the higher return without the risk. I'm sorry. I think it's trying to be a little extra.
basically you also protect the downside. That okay, downside should not be less than this.
I want a certain return, somebody should underwrite it, and my paisa.
Actually, a lot of these problems came up because, Amit, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is one of the first times that we've actually seen prices coming down and the real estate prices coming down significantly in many markets.
So, a number of things are happening. The market has slowed down for a considerable period of time.
Yes.
Bank rates have gone up, and a lot of banks today are not giving money.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of distress, which is why the buybacks are a little difficult to get. But a lot of these subventions and these magical schemes are pre-RERA schemes.
Right.
A lot of them.
Yes.
I'm not saying
Yes,
that it
absolutely.
doesn't happen today.
Yeah.
RERA is a good thing that has happened to us. It is a very good act. It is evolving, and it will evolve because those 40, 50 word pages cannot answer all your questions.
Yes.
There will be a degree of evolution. RERA should be made stronger so that we have confidence.
Yeah.
But at the underlying fact is, rules should be simple. Your investment philosophy should be simple. The more complicated and magical schemes that you go after, the more likely you are to take a higher risk. As simple as that.
Sure. Sure. Absolutely. And as consumers, you must know what you're entering. Just because there's a big board saying interest rate subvention, just don't shut your eyes and go in for it. Understand what you're getting into. And like Amit said, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. It will not be executed. There is Aruna Kumar of Noida who says, at the time of booking, I was shown a different unit by the broker, and now when I have to take possession, I have been handed over a different unit in the same floor. Should I accept the scheme or oppose?
You can oppose it. I mean, if you find that the new unit that developer is offering you is inferior to that unit that you had bought, then you can go to RERA. You can say that, no, I have not bought this particular flat, I bought the other one flat, so please deliver with the other flat. And the developer is bound to give you, or otherwise you get asked the compensation for that. And compensation can be fixed by the RERA, or can anybody, you can go to the RERA for that.
So when the allotment document was given, what number was written, please have a look at it. And again, I go back, and I'm sorry, I'm repeating this a number of times, but when a document comes, it's not just any document, you have to go through it in detail. What was the unit number that was mentioned there?
And the position in that map also, where it has been mentioned, you ask him that which position, which side, because when documentation is done, the all sides, like in your flat, what will be in the north side, what will be in the east side, what will be in the, everything is written. And you should read that and go by that.
And you're built up by an agreement. When you enter into an agreement with the developer, the number of the unit is clearly mentioned in that
Right.
agreement. If you haven't checked it out, or if then that's your problem. But if the developer has mentioned one unit number and given you another unit number, like Prabhakar said, of course you can go to RERA and protest. Unless you feel that there's not much difference,
Yeah.
don't protest for the sake of protest.
Yeah.
If you feel that you're quite happy with what you've got, don't over-exercise your right as a consumer. It's good to get your possession of a apartment. There's Neeti Kumar of Pune who says, I bought in a lucrative scheme where I had to just pay 15%. The rest was to be paid at the time of possession. The builder promised that he will pay rent till possession, but now he has stopped paying that. Can I file a RERA complaint?
You can raise a complaint, but now whether this promise can be adjudicated by RERA or not, RERA only can tell you. But if RERA refuses, go to the consumer.
Your first port of call can be RERA.
RERA.
Go to RERA and make your complaint. In case the RERA authority says that the jurisdiction is of some other authority, then of course you
Go to the consumer court. Consumer court can hear your case and they will educate you.
Lata Singh of Bangalore bought a home, is a home buyer and bought a property in a buyback scheme from a developer based in Bangalore. Now the developer has stopped paying EMIs and I'm unable to pay the high EMIs. What should I do? That is exactly what we are saying. You as a consumer don't have the luxury of saying, "Ab main pay nahi kar sakta." You have to pay because the loan was taken in your name. You have more or less signed off that thing that you will agree. You've entered an agreement with the lender that you will ensure that the money comes back to the lender. The problem that you have, you can either go to RERA or you can go to the consumer court and
sell the property.
Or sell the property.
That is the last recourse to you have. But you can't say that I'll default to bank in paying the EMI. That recourse you don't have.
Okay, we've got Deepak asking, so what are those things we should keep in mind before buying flats under buyback schemes? Amit, you want to give a checklist to consumers?
So here's the way, look at, you want to buy in a buyback scheme. So number one, find out what the current rate is and what is being promised to you. I personally would not recommend buying a house solely on the basis of a buyback scheme, first and foremost. Buy a house, look at what the developer is, look at what the documents are. Under RERA, all documents should be online. Look at what the track record of the developer is. Again, you're a retail buyer, I don't expect you to be looking at all documents with the legal eye, but look at also which banks have agreed to underwrite this property in terms of giving home loans. So please look at that. That also gives you confidence on the project. If there is, for example, an SBI or other reputed banks which are giving home loans on this project, they must have done their own due diligence on the project as well. If they've got RERA registration number, that also implies that they've got all approvals in place to start construction. So those are the few things that immediately come to mind. So please have a look at those. The whole idea of having projects registered with RERA is you should be able to find these documents online or at least ask those questions from the developer.
Right. And today the developer is duty bound to answer your queries. In fact, what we see is that most developers are indeed answering those queries. And now we've got Mona Kumar of Gurgaon who says, should NRIs go for subvention scheme when they are thinking about making an investment? An NRI buyer is on par with a domestic buyer, right?
No
there are no extras that you have to.
Not that I'm aware of any. Yeah, no extra.
So as an NRI buyer, since you're not on the site, you have to be doubly careful. You have to ask the right questions and get the right advisors. But otherwise, you are on par with a domestic buyer. And that's where we're going to end this week in property. The issue is one of great significance to a lot of consumers. The consumers are battling it every day. Like some of you said, you can't afford to pay the extra burden that has come on you, either because the developer is not paying your rent or because the cashbacks have stopped and the entire burden has come on you. But if you default, you spoil your credit rating, you risk the bank moving in and saying, I'll take over the unit, and there is a lot of variables that are there. So what we do suggest is that if you're a new buyer, enter with caution. If you're an old buyer, exercise your right as a buyer and go and make your complaint to RERA, NCDRC, NCLT, whichever forum it is. There are some more issues that are going to be resolved. The SEBI judgment will come in soon, and then we will come back to you to give you some more advice. Thank you for watching. I'm Jayashree Kurup, this is Prabhakar Sinha and Amit
Thank you.
Oberoi.